Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. If you're new to the show, we're going to do this over the next hour or so where we take all of your nutritional questions as they come in. So if you've got questions about vitamins, minerals, and how to change your diet and lifestyle around autoimmune disease, chime those in and I'll do my best to get them answered. Additionally, we're going to be talking and focusing a little bit on glycine as it was our crash course this week. So those of you who missed Tuesday's show, make sure you go back and check that out where we talked all about the amino acid glycine and its roles and impacts on the body, including healing and repair and energy production, etc. So really, really powerful amino acid that can help in a lot of different ways. And I would encourage you to go learn more about so that you can be empowered on your health journey toward improvement. Without further ado, let's dive into your questions. And those of you too, we have, let's see here. We have Glycine available for those of you who'd like to check it out. And there's no coupon code needed right now. It's on sale. It's just automatically applied. But you can go check that out at Gluten Free Society. I'll pop that link into the feed for those of you who want to grab some glycine. So at any rate, let's take your questions. So Winnie says, I'm considering taking glycine and NAC, but I do not tolerate magnesium glycinate well, gives me anxiety. I have the same response to glycine. No, generally speaking, magnesium for some people has a paradoxical effect. And you know, glycinate is just a chelate that binds to the magnesium, and it's just generally, the anxiety piece of that is generally not coming from the glycine as it can come from the magnesium. So at least in my experience clinically, I would not suspect the glycinate aspect. Now, I don't know if you've done other glycinates, if you've tried other supplements that had a glycinate attached and had the same experience. If you have, maybe it is a possibility, but it wouldn't be my top suspicion at all. Let's see, Dr. Peter, can you tell us the ideal combination of supplements to take with glycine to give maximum bang for buck? I'm more than happy to buy those component compounds and produce gel caps. What are you trying to accomplish, Peter? I would say if your goal is to support soft tissue growth and repair, you know, like collagen growth and repair, I would say taking glycine in combination with a high quality collagen, like what we have at Gluten Free Society, it's called Ultra Collagen, would be a great kind of a combo product in that regard. But if you chime in what your goals are, I can give you a better answer as to how to best pair glycine with other things, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Osborne. What are your thoughts? Missing B complex activities, histamine. I'm not sure what you mean, Mara. Do you mean, what are your thoughts about how vitamin B deficiency can reduce the ability for histamine to be activated? Again, I would be speculating on your question. Maybe reword it and I can give you a better answer. I took thiamine. You mean thiamine? And it gave me anxiety. Why is that? If you took thiamine, which is vitamin B1, and it gave you anxiety, it's most likely because you need magnesium. This is one of the common things that can happen to people who are trying to take vitamin B1, especially benfotiamine, is that it can lead to higher levels of anxiety without magnesium, because you need magnesium to help activate it and convert it. So try adding magnesium to that. 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium is where I would start. You can always go up from there. Is it bad to eat lots of protein for a long time? 2 grams for 1 kilogram of body weight is okay. It depends. I mean, is protein unhealthy or unsafe? I mean, anything in high enough quantities can be, but as a general rule, 2 grams per kilogram of lean body weight, keyword being lean body weight. If you're 50 pounds overweight, you want to reevaluate, you know, your protein intake based on what your lean body mass is. But generally what people call high protein is not high protein, it's adequate protein. Protein should be a third of your total calories. So if you eat 1,500 calories a day, you're going to be pushing 500 of those calories should be protein, which is equivalent to 125 grams of protein a day. So, if you're think about that in terms of if you're a 110-pound female athlete, you're eating 125 grams of protein per day just to maintain, your exercise and to maintain your strength and your protein mass. So, no, I think a lot of people overstate what high protein is. If it's a third of your total calories, it's going to be much higher than what you've historically been taught. Oh, let's see. Shalene says, "What's up with your website? Were you hijacked?" Yeah. So here's what's happening. Thanks for the question, Shalene. Google made some algorithmic changes. So if you're shopping or you're on Google Chrome right now, it's going to say that our website has a danger in it. It does not have, website doesn't have a danger. We're working with Google to get that problem fixed. It's kind of a glitch issue more than anything else, but there's no danger to going. If you're working out of any other browser like Safari or I guess what's the other ones a lot of people use, DuckDuckGo, you won't even get that warning. So thank you for asking, because it's confusing a lot of people, but everything's great. If you get that pop-up warning, if you're using Google Chrome, just hit details and scroll down and then hit proceed to website. There's nothing hijacked. Let's see here. I tried glycine a couple of years ago and felt weird on it. What cofactors does it need to utilize for appropriate responses or benefit? Predominantly B vitamins, really, and B6 being one of the most important. Magnesium and zinc are important as cofactors along the pathway of using glycine as well, depending on what you're trying to do with the glycine. But there's also this, right? Some people at high doses need to back off. So like I gave you some dose examples on Tuesday. Therapeutic doses start around 3 grams a day for glycine, but some people can't handle that 3 grams. So in those cases, it's better to back it down to 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram. Take it. If it's still creating a weirdness for you, you might just consider that it's not maybe the best fit for you. But if it's not, now you can take it for a week and then titrate that dose up as you tolerate it, because sometimes it's just an issue of too much too fast. Kind of like exercise. If you haven't worked out in a month and then you go to the gym and go all out, you'll be sore for a week. It's too much too fast. So same thing can happen with supplements. What's the best approach to rectifying polycythemia? Depends on what's causing it. There are different reasons why polycythemia can occur. So the best way to rectify it is to test for the specificity around why you're having or are dealing with that issue. I hardly ever take vitamin C supplements. I eat cooked veggies and very few fruits, yet my INA results show sufficient in vitamin C. Why then do I get sick or infections easily if my vitamin C is sufficient? I mean, there's a million reasons you can get sick. It could be under eating protein. You could have other nutritional deficiencies that also impact your immune system. I mean, vitamin C is not the only nutrient important for immune function and in helping to stave off infection. So I would say largely it depends. If you're taking L-glutamine and you came back insufficient for L-glutamine, so understand what that test is measuring, Wanda. It's measuring whether or not giving your cells more of a nutrient will improve the functionality of your cell's ability, of your cell's growth rate. You could be taking 4 grams of glutamine and still come back insufficient. I mean, that's not an uncommon thing for somebody to be. Your cells are coming back insufficient because your body's glutamine is higher, and there's a lot of reasons why that might be the case. There's core reasons people develop deficiency. One would be you're not eating enough or supplementing. And in your case, that's not true. But there's another reason, and that could be that your gut's not absorbing the nutrition properly from what you are taking or eating. And this is particularly true of glutamine. The irony, the catch-22 of glutamine is that glutamine is the primary fuel source for enteros. So your gut cells, to be able to digest and absorb nutrients from what you're taking, they need glutamine as a fuel source to function. And if you don't have enough glutamine, it actually creates an inhibition or an inhibitory effect on your absorption. And then there's a third reason that's very typical for developing deficit. And that third reason is that there's an underlying inflammatory condition where your body needs more of the nutrient to overcome. And I don't know if you work out a lot, but if you're exercising aggressively, you're burning through glutamine really, really fast. So at any rate, hopefully that gives you a little bit of context. When making bone broth, they instruct you to strain it before storage. Is this a good idea, or are you losing nutrients? Well, you're losing nutrients, but you're also going to have a longer shelf life. So it just depends on how long you intend on storing it. Let's see here. Sorry, folks, I don't have my IT guy today, so I'm flying solo. Let's see. Seeing a NUCA chiropractor entails repeat x-rays to make sure the atlas is where it belongs. What can I do to protect? Ask him to put he should have a shield for you to wear around your thyroid if you're trying to protect your thyroid from the radiation of the repeat x-ray. You could take iodine as well, but I mean, if you're getting repetitive x-ray, I would definitely cover your endocrine organs up with a shield. Have you found glycine helpful for weight loss in your practice? The number one most important aspect of weight loss there's not a magic nutrient, Melinda, that I've ever come across. Like, there's not one versus another. Health, let me reframe that. Healthy choices equate to weight loss. So the best way to lose weight is 6 things that are all under your control. Number 1 is eat well and within the realm of quantity, so that if you're over consuming calories, you're going to gain weight, period. Doesn't matter. So eating well. Number 2, going to bed on time. Number 3, exercise to tolerance. Number 4, sunshine every day to the tolerance of your skin. So don't sunburn, but get plenty of sunlight. Number 5 is clean air. Number 6 is clean water. Those behaviors combined over time are, in my experience, guaranteed weight loss. Where most people with weight loss isn't whether they're taking this supplement or that supplement. Where they fail is that they're eating then they're expending. So if you've got your diet and all those other traits dialed in and you're still struggling with weight loss, the likelihood that your caloric value is higher than your physical expenditure of energy is probably going to be close to 100% true. There are nuanced areas where we have to dig a little deeper, but for the vast majority of people, weight loss is not about a supplement. Never has been, and it never will be. There won't be a magic bullet. You know, the reason that all these people taking Ozempic and GLP drugs are losing weight is because those drugs shut down the appetite. So what actually is happening is those people aren't eating. And, you know, they're not eating, so they're not getting the energy. So they're not taking that energy that they're not burning and they're not storing it as fat. So they're losing weight as a result of appetite suppression in a big way. We have to have controlled appetite suppression with weight loss. Generally speaking, there's 3,500 calories in a pound. And so if we're talking about true weight loss effectively from a diet perspective, ideally exercise an extra 250 calories worth every day and reduce your calories by 250 per day, which will equate to 500 calories a day. And over a week's time, that's 3,500 calories, which equates to a pound of fat loss per week. That's a really safe and effective way to do it. But I know that wasn't your question. But my answer is there's not a magic supplement for weight loss. You have to have the fundamentals dialed in. Let's see here. Recommended a peptide to boost BDNF. This peptide is used clinically in Eastern Europe as a neuroprotectant. Look, I'm not a fan of all these peptides. First of all, it's not to say they work. They can work. What's the problem with peptides? Lack of long-term human safety trials, period. I don't care if they've been using it in Eastern Europe. It's a lot of the things coming out of peptide science is for the most part, it's anecdotal. And if you're trying to be safe and on the safe side, in my experience in life and in nutrition biochemistry, there's no such thing as a free ride. And peptides are kind of marketed a lot as this thing that fixes you or that does something that your body doesn't have the ability to already do. And that's marketing hype. The fact of the matter is pretty much every peptide on the market has no real great long safety trials in humans, and peptides act very similar. They create changes that don't come without side effect cost. And if you're willing to play chemistry set with your body and take that risk, that's your choice. You get to make it. But I'm not a big fan of them. I'm waiting for the next 10 to 15 years to see some better clinical data come out. Like I said, it's not that they don't work. There's plenty of anecdote that shows that they work, but there's almost no real great data that says, as they're working, are they creating damage or harm in another way? And that, to me, first do no harm has to be the thing that we really adhere to. What is up with Glycine to help sleep, giving you wretched nightmares? So, several sleep aids can do that. What I call ninja dreams, where they're so vivid and so realistic, and then some people, in some cases, can give nightmares. Vitamin B1 can do that. Magnesium threonate can do that. Glycine can do that. So, as a general rule of thumb, it's sides. If that's an experience having, as a general rule of thumb. So if it is helping improve the quality of your sleep, minus that, you give it a few weeks, it should subside. If it doesn't, it's probably not a right move for you. Is there such a thing as non-toxic, non-stick cookware? Ceramic coatings are probably the closest thing, I would say, to that. Melinda, if you go, we have a cookware review. Let's see if I can pull it up for you, and I'll share the link. If you go to Gluten Free Society, we have a whole article on different brands of cookware and the pros and the cons. With some of the top ones in terms of health. And part of non-stick cooking is how you cure the pan, how you heat the pan, and how you apply the oil to the pan as well, if you're using like stainless steel. I'll give you just a second and I'll pull that up for you. Here we go. So I'm just titling this Healthy Cookware as a link in the feed of the chat here. So those of you who are interested, you can bookmark that and go back to it later. L-Theanine and Glycine more beneficial? You mean combining the two? Or you mean is one more beneficial over the other? Because they both have their they both have their pros and cons. Where I really like L-Theanine is in the modification of acute stress, especially when you know it's going to happen. So let's say you're going into an argument with somebody and you know it. Take that theanine 30 minutes before you go in. It's going to help minimize the acute stress response that won't necessarily be helpful in that argument. Generally, when people get super stressed out and emotional, the argument goes south. I like L-Theanine for sports recovery. That's an acute response as well. I like L-Theanine for sleep. I like L-Theanine daily for chronic stress. So like if you're in a chapter of life where you're being stressed repetitively, L-Theanine, anywhere from 2 to really even 800 milligrams a day could be super, super helpful in that regard to kind of taper that. And, the classic example of chronic stress, in my experience, would be caretaking. Like if you're caring for an elderly parent who's making their own decisions, but you're having to make decisions from their bad decisions, and it's super stressful, and you love them and they're eating poorly and you can't get them to change. Like those are stressful situations like that. This is where L-Theanine can play a big role in helping you weather that storm. What about glycine or other supplements when the back hurts? Could it be the kidneys or pain from the stomach? It could be, but and glycine wouldn't be on my top choice for pain management supplements. And so, if you're talking about pain, first of all, you got to isolate where the pain's coming from, because you can get referral pain from the kidneys to the back. Certainly, if you have a kidney problem or a kidney infection or a urinary tract infection, you could have a muscular imbalance. You could be sitting in a desk all day and your muscles are stiff because of sedentary behavior. You could have an injury in the back. You could have chronic inflammation. You could have gluten sensitivity. You could have zinc deficiency. There's so many different things to unravel about back pain because it's multifactorial. And for every case of back pain I've ever seen, there's never been kind of an identical trigger unless it was trauma, like a car accident, whiplash, sprain, strain injuries, sports, that kind of thing. So if the back is hurting, and you're pretty certain that it's coming from the back and not the kidneys, probably one of the first things I would encourage anyone to do is get with a good chiropractor. One of the second things I would encourage you to do is self-assess why it was injured in the first place. For a lot of people, it's sedentary behavior and tightness that predisposes to injury from little things. So you might bend over and pick up something light or small that shouldn't have hurt you, but it did because you had muscular imbalance or tightness because of, of a sedentary issue. But again, back pain is very complex and there's a lot to unravel in that. But glycine would not be the thing that I would say, oh, you have back pain, you need to be on glycine. I'd say if you're aiming in that direction, like the biochemical modulation of pain, I would look for omega-3 or SPM as something to take in chronic back pain. Beyond that, I would look for high-dose vitamin C mixed with quercetin as a tool. Those would probably be the two biggest tools. Is glycine the most helpful amino acid for managing blood sugar? No. The most helpful amino acid for managing blood sugar is diet change more than anything else. There's not a singular amino acid that's solely responsible for blood sugar regulation. It's really, for blood sugar, it's more micronutrients than it is amino acids. So like chromium, magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, to name a few of the top important nutrients for managing blood sugar and insulin control. Let's see. Hi, Doc. You mentioned in one of your videos how INA testing is done, and you posted a link. I'd like to show it to my naturopathic doctor, but I can't find the video. Would you please post the link? Reach out, Ingan, to glutenology@gmail.com and ask one of the girls to send you that link. They should have it. My daughter is taking your post-surgery protocol for a total knee construction surgery due to a fall. Will glycine be important to add to what she's already taking? You can add it, but part of that protocol is protein and amino acids. So not so much. We've targeted the key ones in that post-surgery protocol. You could certainly add more. It won't hurt, but if you're following that protocol, you're on the right track. Why can I tolerate high-dose glycine? There's a lot of reasons why you might not be able to tolerate high-dose glycine. And maybe it may just be that more for you is not better. It's not always about mega dosing of supplements to bring about health. Like, I mean, it's really never about mega dosing supplements to bring about health. It's always first about diet and lifestyle change, and then supplements are supplemental to the primary of diet and lifestyle change. What precautions should a person who is genetically prone to chronic kidney disease follow? There's no such thing as genetic predisposition to chronic kidney disease in the extent that you're probably thinking of it. Most chronic disease is not genetic predisposition. It's chronic behavioral patterns, right? And if you look at, there's an argument in nature versus nurture, if you've heard that term, but it's been a kind of a classical, historical, geek out science argument. Which is more important, your nature or your nurture? In other words, what's more important, your behavior or your genetics, right? Genetics aren't a curse. You're not born with bad genes that make you have disease. You're born with great genes, but sometimes we're born into families with bad behaviors, and we learn our behaviors from our family members. So if mom and uncle or grandma or dad or whoever was raising you and teaching you was somebody with chronic kidney disease because of their choices and behaviors, and they taught you those choices and behaviors, then you're going to probably follow in those tracks. That's not because you have bad genes or bad families. It's because you have a shared and learned behavior that's prone to the development of chronic disease. So don't blame your genetics. The best way to avoid any chronic disease, including chronic kidney disease, is to understand how you should eat, how you should exercise, how you should sleep, sunshine exposure, clean air, and clean water. Those are what we call the non-negotiables, fundamental non-negotiables of having great health and vitality. Can increasing protein intake increase urea nitrogen? Yes, it will. I mean, on your kidney tests, if you're going to your doctor and you're eating more protein, your bun's probably going to be higher. Your creatinine might also be higher. Those two things being the case with a higher protein diet are not indicative of kidney disease. Let's see here. Can I use glycine if I've had IgM borreliosis test and have a lot of biofilm? Yeah, there's no contraindication for taking glycine if you have Lyme. What would you advise for someone with pneumonia and very sick, but otherwise has been super healthy before the pneumonia? We have an immune protocol, Charlene, that if you aren't familiar with, let's see if I can pull it up for you. But if you're trying to overcome and you're struggling, then I would look toward, reading about how you can use nutrition to support your immune system's recovery process. And so I'll put up in the feed here our immune protocol. It's the core critical nutrients that help your immune system overcome. And there it is. I just dropped it for you. So check that out. That's what we generally would recommend for somebody struggling like yourself. So Bill says, watched your glycine video you just put out, new subscriber. Thanks, Bill. Welcome. And those of you who are new, look, we have 1,200 videos on YouTube. And if you haven't checked out our crash courses, I mean, I do crash courses on every major nutrient, from the amino acids to the vitamins to the minerals. They're the most in-depth course that you could take, and they're packed with knowledge that you can walk away with. They're also packed with clinical experience indication. So the unique thing about my crash courses, for those of you maybe new to the channel, is that if you watch them, you don't just take away academic knowledge, you take away 25 years of my experience of applying these nutrients in a clinical practice. And so to me, that's an invaluable resource for those of you who are looking to navigate nutrition and just provide better nutrition for yourself or your family. If binders can deplete fat-soluble vitamins, should they still be used with the NAC mold detox? That's why I don't like them, Jacob. I mean, I'm not a fan of, let's just say I'm not a fan of bile acid sequestrant binders. So like if you're binding using like a polystyrene, which is a prescription drug that was originally developed to lower cholesterol, a lot of doctors prescribe this drug to bind bile and then to push that bile out through the stool to get rid of mycotoxins. I'm not a fan of that methodology. I see too many people have come to me and they've been high dosed on polystyrene and their fat soluble vitamins are on the floor and they're struggling with symptoms of fat soluble vitamin deficiency. Of course, one of the most important vitamins to recover from mold toxicity is vitamin D. And if you're binding up your body's ability to absorb that, you can create problems nutritionally. So I'm not a fan of that. One of the other things we see is a lot of omega-3 deficiency as a result of those medications. And so, omega-3 regulates the inflammatory response, which in people with mold and chronic inflammatory response syndrome, low omega-3 is a nightmare for those individuals. So not a fan of that type of binder. Now, there are other binders that don't cause fat malabsorption. Charcoal and zeolite are good in that regard. So I'm more a fan, or I say a bigger fan of non-fat depleting binders if you're trying to follow along with a mold detox. Let's see here. My nutritionist had me on glycine and taurine powder, about 3 milligrams of glycine. 30 minutes before each meal, I stopped because I didn't think I needed it anymore. But should I continue, and is that a good dose? It's a fair dose. 3 milligrams of glycine is nothing. I would assume that maybe that's a typo and that you meant 3 grams of glycine, but 3 milligrams of glycine, I mean, that's hardly no glycine at all. So, maybe it wasn't a typo, maybe it was, but 3,000 milligrams is a good dose. And I would assume that the reason your nutritionist recommended that, prior eating is maybe either you have a gallbladder problem or a liver problem. And so with glycine and taurine, both of them are important for conjugating bile acids so that you can absorb fat more efficiently from the food that you eat. So taking them prior to the meal is just supportive of the bile production and proper gallbladder function. So it depends. Is your problem gone? I mean, did you figure out why? And again, I'm speculating the potential reason just based on what I know, but it shouldn't be something you have to do indefinitely. First of all, test, don't guess. If you haven't had testing done, I highly recommend that you talk to your nutritionist about getting the right type of testing done to discern whether or not those are things your body needs versus, speculating what might be helpful. Is it harmful to take melatonin for a long period of time? Could adding glycine and lowering the dose of melatonin be more beneficial? Possibly. I mean, if you're taking melatonin as a sleep aid, can it be harmful? Yes. I don't recommend melatonin indefinitely for sleep. I mean, you could use. I like to use melatonin for sleep is when traveling from one time zone to the next and trying to readjust. But to use it every day as a staple for sleep, you're missing something. And there's a lot of things you could be missing. So glycine might be helpful in that regard to help with improve your quality of sleep. Theanine could be helpful. Magnesium threonate, is another thing that could be helpful. One of my favorites for sleep, and we use this clinically and people all the time get fantastic outcomes, is L-tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin and melatonin. So your body can't make melatonin without L-tryptophan. So get out there, take your L-tryptophan, especially 1,000 milligrams at night, get out there in the sunshine, because part of activation of L-tryptophan is solar energy can help activate it to go through its reactions better. And you shouldn't need melatonin indefinitely. Let's see here. I heard glycine is in creatine. So how much creatine would give you 3 grams of glycine, or is this brand dependent? So it's not. So think of it this way: glycine and arginine combine to produce or to make creatine. Off the top of my head, I can't give you the exact calculation of how many grams of glycine is in how many grams of creatine. We'd have to go look that one up. But if you're trying to take glycine to improve your own creatine production, it depends on kind of how you're trying to take it. So generally, if you're trying to improve your creatine production by taking glycine, it's not as effective as if you're just taking the creatine itself. So, I mean, I would encourage, if that's your end goal, I would encourage more the creatine than I would the glycine. What is the neurological impact of glycine as an MDA receptor agonist? Calmness, more than anything else, has a calmative effect. And neurologically, it has an immune inflammatory reduction effect. So it's a, so if you remember during COVID, people were having COVID, like cytokine storms, where they were overproducing TNF alpha, interleukin, and other inflammatory mediators as a result of rogue immune function. And so one of the things that glycine helps to do is it depolarize the nerves that on immune cells that would create a hyperinflammatory response. So I would say those would be 2 of the nice reactions that we might be after by using glycine. What's my favorite brand of creatine? It's my own. I'm a little biased in that way. We have, if you're new to the show and you didn't know this, we have over 140 different supplements, gluten-free society that you can tap into. So, when anybody asks me what is my favorite, it's probably, the answer is probably going to be on gluten-free society. I'll put that up for you, and you can check it out. I'm reacting saline IV, some non-toxic chemical. Sorry, the screen refreshes and then I get 50 more comments and then I lose the comment. I have to go scroll back up here. Okay, I'll have to come back to it because I lost the comment. Sorry about that. Found out last week in the ER, or yesterday in the ER, I have a singular gallstone, lost 10 pounds in 1 week from not eating, gallbladder in great shape. Doc said otherwise. How should I go about this nutritionally? I mean, you could look up a gallbladder flush. Depending on the size of your stone, that can be one way to kind of clean out. Taurine, glycine, and vitamin C and magnesium are all super important for healthy bile production. And so stones oftentimes form when you're missing those nutrients, and then you'll get a stone that precipitates out of the bile and then clogs the bile duct, or, creates a blockage. And then you end up, in the hospital, and they want to pull your gallbladder out. But nutritionally, you should be focused on those things. And also, I would have an ultrasound of the liver to see, do you have fatty liver disease? Because your liver ultimately is in charge of producing bile. If you're forming sludgy bile or stones, we got to look back at the liver and see whether it's struggling or not. I took glycine, taurine, and NAC and slept amazing, awesomely. Can you talk about this effect? Well, I mean, there's a lot of potential in that. I mean, I would say of those things, I would say taurine, or rather not taurine, but glycine is probably the one that impacted your sleep the most. But I'm not sure what you want me to talk about or comment on, specifically, Luke. If glycine is depleted by being overweight, what are the benefits of taking extra to counter this effect? That's the question. Some of the research benefits that they're showing is less inflammation and better insulin control in overweight people. So those would be some of the, from some of the human trials, what we see is better insulin control as a whole. Now, I think it's kind of like people that are overweight have less glycine because of the reason that they're overweight. So what do I mean by that? So most people that are overweight are carbohydrate toxic, meaning they're eating more carbohydrates than they need to eat, and they're eating less protein than they need to eat. So I in a sense, I believe that part of the reason that overweight people are glycine deficient is because they're protein malnourished. Remember, if we eat adequate animal protein, there's a lot of glycine in that as well. But and I've seen that be the case. So, but therapeutically, it does have plays a role in insulin sensitivity, glycine, and it plays a role in blood sugar control through that mechanism, and so may have an impact on weight therapeutically. But ultimately, you got to get the weight under control, and high dose glycine is not going to do that. I mean, it may counter some of the effects of being overweight, but it's not going to make you thinner. I'm reacting to saline IV, some non-toxic chemical leaching from plastic, tickly throat, altered voice, and brain fog. This last time, hydration hard, upkeep difficult, POTS, kidneys, dump, water. You need electrolyte. Are you doing aggressive electrolyte? Because if you're not, I would look into that as a first line if you've been diagnosed with POTS. I'd also make sure you're in an environment that's mold-free. We see a lot of POTS develop as a result of mold, chronic sympathetic overdrive. And then mold also, affects hydration by impacting antidiuretic hormones. So a lot of people in mold become dehydrated very, very easily. And then that dehydration leads to blood volume lowering that leads to the dizziness and the POTS type symptom manifestation. Can glycine help heal leaky gut? Not in the same. I mean, there's some research in animal that shows some benefits on leaky gut with glycine, and so we could possibly surmise that there might be a benefit in humans. Where glycine is going to be impactful potentially with leaky gut is more to do with glutathione production, because glycine is a direct precursor to the ability to make glutathione, which is very important for preserving the integrity of the gut lining. But if I were picking, like, what's my top supplements for leaky gut, glycine would not be in that mix. Now, collagen would be, and collagen is rich in glycine, but collagen more for the other elements. I mean, glycine is important, but collagen also has several other key amino acids that help keep the gut lining intact and sealed. I like that comment. So Blue Sky says glycine, magnesium, and inositol an hour before bed does me wonders. I would imagine you're referring to sleep, because all those things are fantastic for sleep. I had such vivid dreams and felt like my body got a great night's sleep when I took those. Yeah. Back to the ninja dreams. I notice I get dehydrated easily when I'm taking creatine. Is there a certain amount of water to intake when taking creatine? I mean, there's no magic number for water. In part, it's kind of a judgment on your own. I'd say if you're exercising, using that creatine, and you're sweating a lot in your exercise, you have to account for sweat loss in your water intake. If you're just a normal day, I mean, a decent place to start is like 64 ounces a day. And then, from that go up depending on whether or not you're losing fluid through sweat. And also you have to consider too, in that scenario, if you're drinking RO water, because if you're drinking RO water, RO water has the electrolytes stripped out of it. So RO water by itself can actually be dehydrating, which is why if you're using an RO filter system, and they're good systems, they filter fantastically well, you should be adding electrolyte back to that filtered water in an attempt to not dehydrate further. I've heard that 5 grams of creatine may not be enough in general, not just for gym rats. What are your thoughts on this? I think it's balance. I think creatine, the old school way to take creatine would be to do what's phase, where you saturate your muscles over to 7 days by taking 25 grams of creatine a day and do what's called the load. And then after that, 5 grams a day would maintain that saturation. And I think if you're looking for higher doses, that's probably a better way to go about doing it. There's great data on that. One of the conundrums with creatine that I have seen, and this is just depending on the person, but I've seen this be true, is that when we start getting over 5 grams, some people start to experience intestinal or stomach nausea. And so it becomes harder to be compliant with its use. So I think you have to make a judgment call in that regard. But in my experience, 5 to 10 grams a day, if you're not doing a loading dose, is amply enough to get the benefits generally that you're after. If your benefits are improvements in cognition, improvements in energy, improvements in workout recovery, and growth in strength and muscle mass. Substitute for aspirin in thinning the blood. And that's like a whole class. We should do a class on blood viscosity and blood thinning. I haven't done one of those. We'll probably put it on the calendar. The reality is do you need to thin your blood, or is your blood thick because of your behavior, right? So think of it like this. If you eat high carbohydrate diet and your glucose is not controlled, what does glucose do to the viscosity of your blood? Well, if you pour a bunch of sugar in water and stir it up and the sugar dissolves in the water, what does that do to the water? Does it make the water more fluidic, or does it make the water stickier and harder to flow? So at a certain point, the water itself becomes saturated, and that saturation, basically it makes the water flow less readily. And the same thing happens with blood viscosity. The viscosity of human blood should be approximately equivalent to water. And so one of the big risks or issues with people having what they call thick blood and they need blood thinners is because they just overconsume carbohydrates. So do you need to thin your blood, or do you just need to change your diet so that you're not causing thickness of your blood? Now, there's plenty of things that we know can thicken the blood. Spike protein can thicken the blood. Insulin resistance can thicken the blood, which is caused by oftentimes excessive carbohydrate. We know things like omega-3 fatty acid deficiency, which plays a role in the blood viscosity. Not having enough omega-3 can make your blood thicker. Not having enough vitamin E can make your blood thicker. So there are nutrients. Magnesium deficiency causes increase in how your platelets clump together, which can make your blood thicker. So there's a lot of things nutritionally that affect the viscosity of the blood. But to me, it's a matter of semantics. You don't need to thin your blood. You just need to make sure your blood isn't too thick, because we want to have such thin blood that we're getting, bruising underneath the skin, because that comes with its own set of problems. If you've ever seen somebody taking drugs like Eliquis or warfarin, and you see all these like bruises on their arm, like the dark brown skin, because there's blood pulling underneath, because they've thinned their blood so aggressively that blood is leaching out of their blood vessels and subdermally starting to show up in the skin. That's, in my opinion, that's dangerous. Now you're creating occult blood loss through over thinning of the blood, which can lead to anemias and loss of nutrients through that blood loss. So we're not really trying to find a substitute for blood thinners. We're really trying to ask information about why the blood is thick in the first place, right? So there are many tests that you can ask your doctor to measure, and they don't do it anymore. I mean, it used to be standard. If we were concerned about somebody having thick blood, they would run tests like INR and prothrombin time, and even blood viscosity tests. They would look at measures like D-dimer and fibrinogen, which are indicators for the potential that your blood viscosity is increasing or too thick. And then from there, you try to reverse engineer why these elements were out of place. And ideally, nutritionally, you would make adjustments so that you could then monitor these moving as time went on. And if you did that, you didn't need to poison somebody with blood thinners. I mean, these blood thinners, we don't have thick blood because we have a deficiency of blood thinning medication. We have thick blood generally because we're malnourished and we have diet choices that aren't great. I mean, there are other reasons that it can happen. There's evidence that's showing that high exposure to EMF repetitively can diminish blood flow. Like in your hands, if you're holding your cell phone all the time, and that radiation is permeating and it's damaging your blood vessels and it's increasing insulin sensitivity and it's thickening your blood. So like that's an energetic reason why we might have a thickening of blood. But for a lot of people, that chronic core issue is really goes back to diet and lifestyle changes. And if you can reverse engineer those reasons, that's how you do it. You don't thin your blood, but you make sure that your blood is healthy. How does your collagen differ from other collagen on the market? Do you recommend this on a daily basis? Is there a test for collagen? I'm not going to speak about other companies' products directly. Because I don't have intrinsic knowledge of how every other company on the market does their stuff. But I mean, as a general rule of thumb, what are some of the benefits of our collagen is one, that we have patents behind our collagen where we've actually had studies done show its effectiveness. And for me, objective outcomes are always the best place to start in terms of benefit versus non. I've had a lot of chronic stress due to several surgeries and also diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. Not much energy, still trying to do what I can, but exercise makes everything worse. Mary, you need to look for the mold. If you've been diagnosed with chronic fatigue and you're dragging, I mean, you can try a lot of different vitamins that I would look for the mold. One of the best supplements to take for people with chronic fatigue, in my experience, is something called SPM, Ultra SPM. We have a product that stands for Specialized Pro-Resolving Mediators, but that's not going to solve your CFS. It might give you a jump, and also CoQ10 might give you a jump, but you got to figure out the underlying core reason. The vast majority of cases of chronic fatigue and chronic pain are going to be either revolving around diet or environmental illness. So with diet, it's, if you haven't read No Grain, No Pain, my book, No Grain, No Pain, go read it and follow the diet for 30 days. If your chronic fatigue starts to improve, you're on the right track. But secondarily, environmental mold, we see a lot in people with that situation. Let's see here. You can take only one, glycine or serine. Which one would you take? This is a great question. Which one would you take and why? I will take the serine because it can be converted to glycine. Well, glycine can also be converted to serine. So, I mean, if that's the argument, just know that, right? If you're talking about cost, glycine, just from the perspective of cost, it's a lot cheaper than serine, especially if you're talking about phosphatidylserine. Now, there are different reasons to take L-serine versus phosphatidylserine, mainly like dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive function. If I had that as a problem, I would probably go with phosphatidylserine as my choice, because it's the substance that's embedded into the neurological membranes that improves functionality. So it would depend. I mean, the answer to that question would really be what is my hypothetical illness? Because if I have an illness or I have a particular problem that I'm trying to overcome or support, using either glycine or serine, it would depend on what that was as to which one I might choose. But just if we're just talking purely cost and inexpensive, glycine is cheaper than serine, and you do get glycine to serine conversion. How to reverse hypertension, also predisposed to arrhythmia. I mean, watch my show on blood pressure. I did a whole crash course on how to reverse high blood pressure, Simon. So you might just go to, if you're already on my YouTube channel, search that up and watch that crash course. There's a lot of different things that need to be done to evaluate blood pressure and to get it to come down. In the summer, I drank 4 gallons of tea in a day with electrolytes. I sweat so much it can damage the machines I'm working on. What should I do? I'm not sure I understand your question. I mean, if you're sweating a lot because you're just a heavy sweater and you're out in summer and you're working in a hot place, I mean, you're not going to change the nature of how you sweat. I mean, part of the sweating mechanism is to prevent your body from overheating. So your body's just trying to help you get through that heat. I mean, if you're trying to reduce your sweating, just one of the natural ways to do that is take a cooler with you at work. You do that if you're in these hot places, take a cooler with ice in it and keep some wet towels in that ice, and then periodically wrap one around your neck or drape it across the top of the head, because that cooling effect here and here will reduce the sweating mechanism to a certain extent, and it might help you preserve some of your water while also reducing the potential for overheating. Outside of that, again, I don't know the limitations of what you can do at work, but if you're at a job where you don't have those kinds of options where you can go into an air conditioning place and take a break, I mean, the best things you can do is just try to use physical cold to try to reduce your sweating mechanism. I'm going to do your INA testing, but take 400 to 800 milligrams each night of magnesium citrate for restless legs. Will that give an inaccurate result for magnesium, since I know there are several kinds? No, I mean, the INA test is an average of the last 6 months. So you could be taking supplements, and ideally you would want to do the test when you're taking supplements as well, because you want to see how effective the supplements you're taking are. Is it enough? Are you doing the right thing? Does glycine cause high ammonia? Not typically. I mean, we don't see therapeutic doses of glycine driving up hyperammonemia. Glycine is one of those. It's been studied at really high doses, and with virtually, I mean, the only real side effect in the research trials that have been done on humans has been predominantly stomach upset at really super higher doses. Some people get a little anxious or get a little jittery. But as a rule, it's not, you can always go too high, but I think if you're staying within the realm of that 3 to 6 grams a day, which is what we talked about in the crash course, I don't think you've got much to worry about there. Is there any way to increase cartilage? I have pain on the tops of my feet, and the doctor said there's some loss of cartilage there. I'm 59. How does the doctor know there's a loss of cartilage? Do you have pre and post x-rays that can prove that there was more cartilage at one point in time than there currently is? But I hear that a lot. I get people all the time that have been to their orthopedic doc, and the doc wants to do surgery, like a knee replacement, because they're telling them you have no more cartilage. And then we need to do some good nutrition and some good rehabilitation of the knee. And they have cartilage. They weren't taking care of the cartilage they had. And so the other thing is how are the x-rays taken to measure the thickness of cartilage? Because if you're doing weight bearing versus non-weight bearing, it manipulates the image of what you see. There's just a lot behind that, Diana. If you're trying to improve your joint health as a whole and support cartilage, we have a product called Ultra Joint Support, and it's a mixture of glucosamine, chondroitin, and MSM, that's a great place to start in that regard. But ultimately, I would encourage you to get an INA, an intracellular nutrition analysis, to determine other nutrients that you might be lacking that might be, impacting how well your body, regenerates cartilage and repairs your cartilage. What are therapeutic doses for SPM for pain and or fatigue? So if you're using our Ultra SPM product, we generally, if we're talking about severity that's pretty high, we have them take about 4 of those for the first month, and then we back them down to 2, and that seems to be pretty effective. Let's see here. If choline is helping for a friend's essential tremors, how much should they take and for how long? It just depends. Have they been tested? 2, why do they have essential tremors? Choline can be great, support nerve tissue function, but if that's not the reason the essential tremors exist, then it's just going to be therapeutic masking using a nutrient. And, it's fine. There's no real danger in choline supplementation. But the danger is in the symptomatic reduction without figuring out why the problem exists. To me, that's what allows the problem to persistently and aggressively get worse with time, to a point where maybe choline quits working. So ultimately, that person should figure out why they have essential tremors. Generally, categorically, food, chemicals, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies are reasons why. And eggs are not more effective, in my experience, than pills, not to correct deficiency, and not for therapeutic ranges. It's hard to eat enough eggs to get, super high doses of choline into a person. Yeah, that's a good comment. So after adding glycine powder to my green tea in the morning, or herbal tea in the evening, I've noticed that I sleep better. It's a slight sweetness, but not overwhelming. Yeah, I love the way glycine tastes. I mean, as a sweetening agent, for me and my own taste buds, it's just a real mild sweet, but it's no aftertaste like stevia and some of the other sweeteners that that people use. And there's potential for therapeutic benefit. Why is collagen a migraine trigger? Collagen itself isn't a migraine trigger. There may be aspects of the collagen you're taking that trigger migraine specifically for you. But collagen itself is not a migraine trigger. I would say the only time I would consider collagen to be a migraine trigger would be somebody who had really high oxalate toxicity levels, in which case there are several amino acids in collagen that can lead to the production of more oxalate in somebody who's already got a problem. But beyond that, it's not typically a migraine trigger. I mean, there's different forms of collagen, different types, and so some people can be reactive. So like there's, you can buy products that are derived from chicken or beef or fish. Is probably the 3 predominant types. And there are people that are reactive to those different animals. Sometimes you might have a person with a food sensitivity to the ingredients the collagen's made from, and that might be the migraine trigger itself, but not collagen per se. Have you seen red light therapy help psoriasis? My 28-year-old son has it, and I want him to quit eating gluten, but can't get him to do that yet. Also ordered him an INA test. More than red light, I've seen ultraviolet help psoriasis. So that would be, if I were picking one over the other, probably be ultraviolet versus red light. Okay. Sorry, guys. Like I said earlier, I'm flying without my tech team today. I heard yesterday that the 3 best supplements for estrogen metabolism and metabolic health is glycine, glutathione, and calcium deglutarate. In your opinion, would you agree? And if glycine helps make glutathione, it sounds like taking only glutathione would be sufficient. Yes, I would agree with that. Taking glutathione, you're taking the thing instead of taking the thing that makes the thing. But yeah, and I would actually put magnesium on that list, especially if you're taking any kind of supplemental estrogen, externally, like a bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And the reason why estrogens are metabolized out of the body, and they're metabolized in a healthy way through a process called methylation. And so there's a gene called COMT, catecholomethyltransferase, which is a magnesium-dependent enzyme, and it plays a major role in metabolizing estrogen into non-risk estrogens, because there's different estrogen metabolites as your body's processing it. Some of these estrogen metabolites can increase the risk for cancer, and others are excreted healthfully by the body. But we need magnesium to do that, and we also need folate and zinc to do that. So I'm surprised that whoever you were listening to or talking about didn't maybe mention those things, but I would add those to the list for sure. And I'd probably replace the glycine with glutathione as well. Maybe the person was saying glycine more specifically because glutathione is harder to absorb, when you take it, versus glycine, which can increase glutathione levels and is easily absorbed. So I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but that would be my speculation. My daughter gained 50 pounds in 6 months and is struggling with polycythemia. Ruled out mold. Are you sure you ruled out mold? A lot of people tell me they rule out mold, and what they really did is had somebody come do a mold air test that didn't really rule out mold. I would highly encourage you to go to moldjacked.com and read. We have a really comprehensive article on how to hire a mold inspector. And if you think you've ruled out mold, look at that article, and if the mold inspector didn't do the things that article talks about, then you have not ruled out mold. And if you had a mycotoxin test, you also haven't ruled out mold, because sometimes people who really struggle, when we do mycotoxin testing, they get false normal results, and you have to actually pull mycotoxins out of them using basically glutathione. You have to push it out of them. So that's a potential possibility. The other thing I would think too would be gluten. Gluten sensitivity, if she's not gluten-free, and grain-free. You need to get that ruled in or out. And if you go to Gluten-Free Society, we have that test that people can do the genetics of gluten sensitivity to help to determine whether going gluten-free is the right move. Let's see. Huge hanging floaters in the eye with impacting my vision associated with retinal tears. Can I dissolve them? How? Don't want a vitrectomy. If for no other reason, don't trust the anesthesiologist. I'm a fast metabolizer. So I would I just talked to somebody yesterday, in my practice, to a patient, and she had retinal tearing, and we put her on Focus. Focus is an eye support formula, a nutritional eye support formula that we carry at Gluten Free Society. And she came back several months later, and the retinal tear had completely healed. And her eye doctor was just totally blown away. So, I mean, I'm not an eye doctor. I don't see predominantly eye disease, but that's just an anecdote I could share with you in that regard. Let's see here. Is it beneficial to take zinc carnosine long term? I mean, what are you after? What are you trying to do? If you zinc carnosine is generally used as a form of zinc that helps with the gut. So, I mean, if that's your goal, you can take it. I mean, there's no real danger depending on your dose for taking it long term if your dose is reasonable. But the question is it beneficial? It just depends. It depends on the person. What inventions or devices to kill mycelium inside the walls, like desiccating it with infrared heat? If you got mold in your walls, you need to get out. I mean, if you kill mold, you create fragments of mold that are just as immunogenic and just as toxic. So you don't want to try to kill it and live with it dead, because you'll be breathing in all the minor fragments that molds produce, the off-gassing, the VOCs, the mycelial fragments, the hyphal wall proteins that split off of dead mold cells. All that is toxic. So killing it, this is why I've talked about this, killing mold isn't what you want to do. You don't want to kill the mold, you want to remove it. And then in the removal process, you want to identify why it grew. And that's always going to be moisture. So you have to identify the source of the moisture. If you've got mold growing in your walls, you've got a moisture problem. You've got a vapor barrier problem, in your home. That's what some people are doing, is they're sealing, like literally sealing off their outlets and their light sockets, where the mold from the wall cavity is emanating into their airspace. And so they're sealing those things with different sprays, like foam sprays or silicone sprays or gels. But then there's some risks with that too. So, I mean, I'm not here to tell you to go seal all your wall cavities. But if you've got it growing in your wall, you got to figure out why. And if you just try to kill it, there's not a technology that's going to kill it that isn't also going to create, excuse my language, a shit storm for your immune system to have to deal with afterwards. What about floaters in the eye? Floaters are oftentimes, in my experience, they're misfolded proteins that are perceived in the visual fields, and one of the top causes of them is insistence in diabetes. So are you controlling your blood sugar? Because if you've got good tight blood sugar control, I remember years ago, before when I was a kid, I think I've shared this story before. I was an obese child. I was 12 years of age. I was fat, and one of the things I always had was these floaters in my eyes. Why I have this experience. But as I got healthy, what I noticed is those went away. And I've had this with many, many patients over the years that have come to see me, and they were diabetic or had problems with blood sugar control. We get that stuff under control. Most of these people are reporting that their floaters are going away. So I would think about blood sugar control as a first step. Follow the no grain, no pain diet. If you haven't already read my book, do that and get on that diet and see if that's helpful for you. Is there an essential oil that has anti-mold properties? Yeah, lots of them. Thyme, oregano, clove, citrus, cinnamon. Lots of oils are antifungal, anti-mold, because the plants use them to prevent, the natural molds in the soils from taking them over. I'm not a carrier for any oil company. I don't get paid by any of these guys, but I know there's a product called Thieves Oil, and I don't remember which company makes it, but it's a blend of different oils, including clove and cinnamon, and I think citrus, among some others, and frankincense. And there's a book written years ago by an engineer in, I think, Missouri, who was doing mold remediation, and it was failing, and so he started to use Thieves Oil in his mold remediations, and it started to become more successful. So there's that. I mean, I can't speak from personal experience of having any kind of home truly remediated with just using Thieves Oil, but and I would never try to stay in a moldy home and just burn Thieves Oil as a solution. But if you're in a home that's clean and you're trying to prevent potential mold, I would say that would be a good option. What would it take to survive a bird flu pandemic? Man, you guys just try to get me in trouble. I question any pandemic. I question the history of pandemics. I think that the vast majority of historical pandemics were either perpetuations by nefarious force or malnutrition. I mean, when we look at today, when we look at where we have the worst malnutrition in the world, we have the most infectious disease, and we have the most deaths and mortality from infectious disease. So if you take care of nutrition, your immune system is the most powerful antidote to any kind of infectious microorganism, having a healthy immune system. So how do you have a healthy immune system? You eat well, sleep well, get sunshine, exercise according to your tolerance and strength, drink clean air and breathe clean water. Those are the things. Like, what caused the rapid reduction of infectious disease in the U.S.? It was hygiene. It was engineering. It was centralized plumbing. It was food safety laws at a time where food was being sold with rotten bacteria in it, at a time where there was no such thing as centralized plumbing, and people were taking dumps and throwing their poop and their urine in the streets, and you had 20 people living in a one-bedroom house, and you had people rolling from the countryside into cities, living in tight quarters with poor hygiene and contamination of cisterns that were water storages. And so people got sick more frequently, not because we have to fear any type of microorganism, but because they were living at an imbalance. So you say, what am I going to take to survive a bird flu pandemic? What I've always been taking: truth. I'm going to take truth, and I'm going to make sure that I do my part to make sure that my body's healthy. Let's see here. Okay. A lot of comments. Carnivore here, 23 months now, still have tinnitus and floaters, on days fasting. Is that a cutoff in the comment? Not sure what the question is there. But I would say if you're carnivore, you're probably controlling your blood sugar pretty well, especially after 23 months. You might look toward nutrition as a whole for reasons why you're having floaters. We'll see a lot of people, even on a carnivore diet, still struggle in that regard because they have different deficit minerals, especially with tinnitus. So you might see magnesium, calcium deficiencies or copper deficiencies in tinnitus, despite the diet change. Those would be things worth looking into. Additionally, with the floater and key nutrients, like, one of the common ones is zinc deficiency. Zinc distributes vitamin A or carries vitamin A into the retina, where the eye tissue has the best capacity at healing. And so we've seen that be the case as well. So I would say if you're in that restriction of a carnivore diet, get your micronutrient testing done and see if there's anything obviously going on which might correlate to why you're having some persistent issues. Let's see. How do you spell the anti-mold essential oil? Thieves, Thieves. Let's see. Do you believe in what they say about all the chemicals in our toilet paper? I don't know who they are, and I don't know what you're referring to in terms of what they are saying. But I would also say this. I mean, you could argue that toilet paper being bleached and with many chemicals in it is maybe not the best thing to rub on your bum. But you could also argue that going out in nature and using leaves or other things in that nature pose some serious health threats and risks as well. But I'm a bigger fan of a bidet than I am of toilet paper. And not everybody has a bidet. They're super popular in Europe. But I like the bidet as a means to self-hygiene at home in that regard. Other than moving out, what to do if the owner of the building keeps delaying fixing the mold issue? I mean, it depends. If it's your building that you're renting and he's violating your lease by not making sure that the house or the home is habitable, if you've accrued evidence of the problem, maybe talk to an attorney. Sometimes a strongly written letter from an attorney gets people moving a little bit more quickly. Thoughts on magnesium bisglycinate? I have good thoughts about that. It's a good chelate version of magnesium. I don't know if you have a specific question. Can floaters be as a result of heavy metals or parasites? I haven't seen that be the main culprit personally in my own practice. But I mean, those things are oxidative. Could that oxidative damage contribute to floaters potentially? Theoretically, yes. Is glycine an amino acid? Yes, glycine is an amino acid. Copper and zinc help my floaters. I saw a bidet in a McDonald's in Japan many years ago. Now, I don't know about public bidets, much the same as I don't really care for public bathrooms personally. But yeah, a bidet is, in my opinion, a far greater, it's a far safer, more natural, and better tool to use for your own personal hygiene than say toilet paper. And that's not to say you couldn't use it. I'm not trying to scare everybody away from toilet paper, but they make bidets now relatively inexpensively. You can get them for, I think I've seen them from $30 to $50, where you just install them over your toilet seat, and the hygienic effects of actually using water to clean yourself are far superior, in my opinion, than to rub a paper over you. Can you get benefits of glycine and magnesium by taking the magnesium bisglycinate, especially for sleep and blood pressure? Well, magnesium has effects on sleep and blood pressure, as does glycine, but there's not enough glycine in magnesium bisglycinate. So like the quantity of glycine necessary therapeutically is like 3,000 milligrams a day as a kind of a starting place. So, I mean, if you're using a magnesium bisglycinate supplement, you're not even approximating anywhere near 3,000 milligrams of glycine from that particular supplement. So the bulk of the benefit is actually going to come from the magnesium itself, not the glycinate form. The reason they attach the bisglycinate is because it's an easy absorption. It helps and aids in the absorption and uptake of that magnesium. So it's not that there's any kind of real therapeutic effect of the amino acid attachment to that magnesium. Okay, I think we gotta wrap. My stomach's growling. That means it's time to go. Hey, I want to say thank you for all of you being here today and spending the last hour and a half with me. Thanks for bringing your questions. As I said earlier, if you're new to the show, come visit us at glutenfreesociety.org. We've got tons of fantastic information over there about diet and lifestyle change. Sign up over there for our newsletter, and you can tap into all kinds of wonderful information I'll send to you without spamming you, and help you on your journey, help you on your health journey. If this show was helpful, remember, don't forget what our mission is. It's to save 100 million lives. And the only way we can do that is if we spread this message of health and empowerment to people. So I encourage you, if you've got friends or family members who could benefit from this information, please help me reach that 100 million by sharing with them. This information is invaluable. It really is. And I think it's an archive of data that can literally save lives. And so help me do that. It's part of my mission. If you're looking for good quality supplements, come visit me at Gluten Free Society. We've got over 140 products there. You can browse through our store. And if you've got questions about any of our products, how they're made and what's in them, you can always reach out to my customer support team and they can get you great answers. And if you're interested in getting tested for gluten sensitivity genetics, or you're interested in getting micronutrient tested for vitamin and mineral deficiencies, we offer that at Gluten Free Society as well. So tap into those resources. Those are available direct to consumer without a doctor's note. As we know, so many doctors just aren't trained in nutrition and can't fathom or don't have any idea about how these technologies work and how they can help their patients with it. So we offer that directly to you because we know you're starving for this type of information. So when you sometimes hear me just talk to your doctor about X, Y, or Z, I understand that's a frustrating statement to hear from me. I don't discourage you to have a relationship with your doctor, but I also understand that doctors don't generally have a knowledge of nutrition that'll be super helpful for you. So that's what this show's all about. Appreciate your patronage. As always, I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we will be back here next Tuesday for another fantastic nutritional crash course. Take care. We'll